Welcome to another riveting episode of the Show. We are two geeks who talk about everything. My name is Aaron, and I'm joined by my cousin and co-host Landon. What's up, man?
What's up? Good day, Thundercats.
Oh,
I'm wearing a Thundercats shirt.
I have that exact same shirt. It's in a pile of clean clothes that I just folded over the weekend.
There you go. I don't know that you'd constitute that as a pile because once they're folded, they're in a stack.
That's
So
true. That's true. It's in a stack of clean clothes
there you go.
that I folded over the weekend. Now, am I
There.
going to put them in drawers where they belong? Absolutely not.
If I was a bachelor, there is no way that I would ever do any of that stuff. I actually, if there's one thing, I'm a pretty neat person, but if there's one thing that I really am not good at that my wife loathes, it's how there's this mounting pile of clothes beside my bed that I disrobe and then I put clothes and I just keep disrobing there. I'm just waiting for like I should have had like these servant people, like and if I was an Egyptian king, you know what I mean?
You
And
need a valet.
yeah, I need a valet. That's what I need, a valet, you know? Yeah.
Uh, so I at least have a laundry basket or a hamper, if you will. It's tall. It's about the size of a tall, kitchen trash can. Uh, but here's where I think I'd go above and beyond as a bachelor. I have a tendency to take the clothes out of the dryer and fold them, whereas I feel like when I'm feeling lazy, I'll just leave them in the dryer. And when I need something, I'll turn it on for 15 minutes and then pull it out. It's nice and toasty,
That's a good way to go.
especially in the winter, man. That's the way to do it. You get a you get a nice shirt on. It's nice and warm. It's like a hug.
Now listen, you know I'm happily married. I mean, I am. I love my wife 20 years. And I don't want to go away from that. I love my kids and family. But there are moments where the bachelor life is appealing, and I get to travel for work some, but the idea of being in your own place and even in your own filth, seems
Master of my
appealing.
domain,
Master of my domain,
of
right?
the castle, the king of the north.
The king of the north.
All
Oh,
right. So today, folks, I almost when I do our introduction, I tried to do some kind of different adjective to describe our episode, and I almost said mythical episode. But I didn't want Rhett and Link to come down on us and be like, it's too close to Good Mythical Morning, and so let's not say mythical. But we are getting back into the latter half of the first season of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. At the end of episode 4, which is where we left off, it kind of left us with a cliffhanger, and Percy was at the bottom of the Mississippi River. And then episode 5 picks up right where we left off. Before we get into that, we should probably say, hey, spoilers if you have not seen the rest of the first season of Percy Jackson. We're going to be talking all about it, and so it's the end of the first book in the series, The Lightning Thief. It's really well done. So, like I said, episode 5 picks up where we left off. We learn that Percy can breathe underwater. Of course, he can breathe underwater. His dad is the god of the sea, right? I mean,
of course.
would you expect that he can, breathe underwater? That's one of those. He should be living in Atlantis or something. What did you think about that episode? Picking up, we didn't see the Chimera anymore, and we didn't see Echidna anymore. They just kind of got left behind at the top of the arch, and then Percy's okay. Like no worries.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, first of all, the show's been pretty action packed. I mean, there's not like a whole lot of downtime. There's each episode. I was getting to the point and getting to this latter half where I was like, oh, I guess the first book's gonna like go on through multiple seasons because I don't see how they're gonna finish out the rest of the book like in these next four. But I was wrong because that they really did get it all in there. The surprising thing is although even as I approached the last couple of episodes, I was like, there's a lot to cover. And yet, you know how in some shows you watch how you feel like they rush it, like to fit it all in? I didn't feel like that in this show. I felt like the timing and the pace was good, and I liked it a lot. So yeah, I mean the very next episode was pretty cool. With him and what's her name? Annabeth? Is that what her name is?
Annabeth, yeah,
Yeah. That was a really cool episode. You keep having these characters graduate in their perspective about what it means to be friends, what it means to be like on a quest, and how they deviate from what is maybe the way the stories would depict a quest because they're doing what the right thing to do is.
right.
So anyway,
Yeah, so this episode is called "A God Buys Us Cheeseburgers." That's my kind of episode.
I know, right?
Um, so we see Percy, Annabeth, and Grover. They encounter Ares, the god
Mm,
of war,
mm,
and they face a challenge arranged by Hephaestus, which is meant for Ares, but
right.
Ares sends Percy and Annabeth to deal with it on, it's on them now because Ares, he doesn't want to have to deal with Hephaestus because the whole thing is, that's part of that whole Greek mythology thing. Hephaestus is married to Aphrodite, and
Right,
Ares is having an affair with Aphrodite.
right.
So it's like
It's
just
murky.
dirty family stuff.
And he's
Um,
obviously I mean, he is a victim of a horrible circumstance. And he is, but he's a very smart man. He's a very smart god, and he is
Hephaestus, yeah.
sure. Yeah, so, he lays out this trap that's a pretty effective trap,
Hmm.
but Ares, having seen it coming, employs the young ones,
That's right.
the bobbins.
Yeah. And I really liked is it Timothy Amundsen playing Hephaestus. Seen him on Psych previously. I don't know if
Yeah.
you ever watched that series. Great
Yeah. Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
And I loved him as Lassie on there. He was so great. But he has just one scene in this episode. Does a great job with Hephaestus. And then they continue their journey. And Percy is kind of insolent towards Ares. He's not really giving the god of war the respect he thinks he deserves. Um,
We also got a little
that's
bit more of Grover, because of and his dialogue with Ares, and really, he's not just a sidekick. He's really
right.
not. He's more than that. And
Yeah.
I think that was really cool, because that's kind of an upgrade on his character. I did think it was interesting how Hephaestus and Annabeth, it's about letting go, right? It's
Right.
about, moving on even, really. And that's what helps convince for Percy to be released.
Yeah. Um, I really think the interactions, especially between the three main characters here, it's a highlight of the show, and the chemistry I think that these kids have together, the actors. I think it's only been getting better with each episode.
Yeah.
So we move on from here. Episode 6 is we take a zebra to Vegas, which is sort of what they do. I mean, they're on a truck with a bunch of you know exotic animals, but that does deliver them to Las Vegas. These titles just get quirkier and quirkier, but again, that's how they are in the book series.
Right, right, right.
um so they get to Las Vegas, and they arrive at the Lotus Casino. They have Percy's having these mysterious dreams. There's a lot happening in this episode. What stood out to you the most here?
I think when watching it, you're trying to understand how people are getting lost in in the gambling. The original premise is that I think it's food, isn't it, or something like that, that would draw a person to be intoxicated or lose themselves. But
Yeah,
it's more than that here. I mean, it's the very air they're breathing, isn't it? Is that
right.
and
Yeah, it's
so
it's almost like it's being pumped through the vents, the whatever this magic is that
right.
causes people to lose their memories. It's not just the food.
Now, this episode had a special, significance because of the actor that plays the god. But I think that there is and you can tell about that. I can't remember his name, but he's from Hamilton and oh man, Mary Poppins Returns. What's his name?
Lin-Manuel Miranda.
No, say it again because you broke up.
Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Right. My kids would like flick my ear for not knowing that. But anyway, so he was great. But I think other than that, like there's this chapter in the book was one of my favorite chapters because maybe it's the lure of Vegas or the parallels of being, intoxicated and losing yourself, in that kind of mindset. The part though that I think is interesting to me is Grover's plight about Pan, right? You
Yeah.
know, so that offshoot I had actually forgotten about. And so when the show came up and it was talking about that, I was like, oh right, 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 right. There was a whole nother. So we had the previous episode with him with Ares where you learn more about him, and then this kind of takes it even a step further where Grover kind of has his own quest that he's going on. So that was very interesting.
Yeah, that's something we learned about Grover. And it's one of those things that's not mentioned very much in the first book because we're
Right,
so focused on you know, Grover as a character is sort of a guardian um for Percy and for Annabeth. And what we learn is really for all satyrs, it's their goal in life basically is to get their searcher's license or whatever. Um, and then from there, they are able to go on the hunt for Pan, who um, has been missing for what, millennia.
right,
Um, and this is the satyr god of nature. And he's been missing, and so we did get a glimpse of now we've had a couple of older satyrs who had their searchers licenses at Medusa's place.
right,
um it was Grover's uncle who
right,
was had been turned to stone, and
right.
then we saw another satyr here at the Lotus Casino. Excuse me. and
Who
uh
was
and
that
but
again?
he's lost. The satyr at the casino.
Yeah.
I cannot remember his name, but I don't think he was in the book.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't recall. I again, like I had forgotten all about that pursuit, but it was a bit of a distraction along the way. What did you think about oh, what's the god's name? In the casino.
Hermes.
Yeah. What did you think about his persona and who he was? Because this was a deviation for me from who he is in the camp. Like he's not at the camp, but he's the travelers one, right? I mean,
Right.
so the idea at the camp when we first are introduced, it's like Percy doesn't have a home, nobody knows who his dad is, and so he gets to stay at Hermes' little cabin there because he accepts all people. So you have this kind of view of Hermes that's like an open, kind, good, but we constantly run into these gods and they just really are not good. They're really there's stuff about them, and this is a character that you come to. It's a love hate with him because I actually liked his character a lot, but he's a little bit of a jerk, you know.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, because part of our, and really, and Percy's, well, Percy and Annabeth both, part of their perception of Hermes comes from Luke's perception of Hermes.
Which right,
He is Luke's dad.
right,
And Luke has this image in his mind that Hermes is a horrible, I was going to say human being, but he's a horrible entity, um who neglected not only him but his mother as well. And
right.
so we at this point we don't know much about Luke's mom. We do find out more about her in I believe the last book of the series. But it's it really does taint their view of him. And so I think because of that, it taints our view of who Hermes is. And when it comes down to it, Hermes, he helps them out, but not really. He
Right.
keeps them busy in the Lotus Casino long enough to where they miss their deadline.
Right.
even though he gives them his taxi so that once they get out on the street they can be anywhere, and then they arrive in Santa
Right.
Monica, and then
Right.
that's the end of it. um but again, at the same time, he kept them in the casino knowing that time passed by more quickly
Right.
uh for them in there than it did, or it passed by more quickly outside than inside the casino. And then once they left, it's past the solstice. So no matter
Right.
what they do now, they've missed Zeus's deadline.
Right. I guess I looked at Hermes as initially like Luke's description and all that. I looked at Hermes as neglectful. You know what I mean? But
Right,
not and all of the gods I see is neglectful. I mean, Percy's dad is not been around him, so your initial understanding or even Athena, just all of this perception of how the gods are, it's just distance gone and all that. So when you meet Hermes here, and he's a bit more nefarious, and cynical, and it's just like, oh, you really are a jerk. Now, it's that to me, um, kind of takes us down the path because the whole book has been about getting it is by the deadline. And so if you're reading the book for the first time, when you realize they passed the deadline, now your whole thing is flipped because now, I mean, it's almost like a climactic moment. What's going to happen now? Because pretty much you don't have it by the deadline. Zeus is just going to start fighting, right? And
right.
then that's it.
Yeah,
So,
war breaks out between Zeus and Poseidon, and that's like the end of it. um yeah, but Percy, being the character of integrity that he is, he's bound and determined to finish his quest. I
right.
don't think he cares so
Regardless.
much about the Master Bolt at this point
Right.
as much as he does getting to the underworld and saving his mom,
Right.
because he knows that Hades has his mom and is holding her hostage.
Right.
And so that is, it's funny. We get to the next episode, which is titled "We Find Out the Truth," sort of. And we when we find out the truth, it's murky at best.
Right.
Uh, we get some backstory on Percy, and we get a lot of action as they make their way through the underworld. Unfortunately, Annabeth is kind of taken out of the this chapter, if you will,
Right.
pretty early on. Once they get into the underworld and get past Cerberus, the three-headed dog.
Right.
Um,
Are you sure it wasn't Fluffy?
yeah, yeah. It was very much modeled after Fluffy, I think. You got your three-headed Rottweiler.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it
Now
wasn't
the
music that calmed him down, it was playing ball.
Yeah, playing
A
ball,
little
that'll do
squeaky
it.
toy.
Now, Annabeth, she is rooted on the spot because of her own regrets,
Uh-huh.
right? And so she's kind of stuck in that. Not that they all don't have them, but they all run and basically get away. She uses her little sphere thing and is able to teleport out. And then
Right.
Grover and Percy go on. Now, interestingly enough, when I'm reading the book, and of course I knew the book, but when the shoes start dragging towards the pit, I really I mean, I don't know about you, but when I first was reading, I'm like, that's Hades. I didn't for the life of me, I did not pick up that it could be anybody else. And then you meet Hades and you realize it's not that. So at that point, I'm kind of like, and I didn't know much about Kronos. You know, I of course I've grown up hearing all about Zeus and all of those, but I didn't know much about Kronos. This book sets up that stage for that in a really cool way, especially with the little dream sequences. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Did
So
you
yeah.
but at what point did you recognize that it was I don't want to spoil for the next episode as we're building up to this, but how much? At what point did you recognize that there was that the betrayal was Luke?
Oh, well, I mean, I remembered it from the book, so I wasn't shocked.
No, no, but
Now,
I mean in the book, like when and like it wasn't with the shoes, right?
No, 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 no.
See,
I when
I
the
didn't
shoes
at all
when
pick
the
that up.
no, yeah, when the shoes went wonky and started carrying Grover off to Tartarus in the book, I just chalked it up to some kind of, I don't know, mistake in the
Yeah,
magic. Like I figured something was wrong, but I didn't suspect Luke. Um,
nor I. Not
like
even the least bit.
even though there's that part of the prophecy that says a friend will betray you.
Right.
Uh, I was not thinking that that would be Luke because he's back at
Yeah.
camp.
See, I
He's not
already
a part of
thought we'd
this.
already gone through it. So when the betrayal part had moved on from me, because I just figured it was the kids, like, it was as they were learning to each other and they had to, they went against their inclinations. I just thought it was resolved. I thought it was between them, right?
Yeah,
So I didn't think it was still an open prophecy that there was going to be any other betrayal. I thought it's just, once we learn about Kronos, it's like, okay, it's just that's the bad guy. No
yeah,
idea about that happening.
yeah. Yeah, and it's so crazy that the whole reason. I mean, we find out that Luke gave Percy those shoes was so Percy would be the one wearing them.
Yeah, and yeah,
And knowing that Ares was going to secretly hand off the master bolt,
right.
and then they would have it, and those shoes would carry him down to the depths of Tartarus, where Kronos would be waiting for the master bolt.
Right, right.
um that, yeah, it was nuts. And I want to talk about Hades. Like, I don't recognize the actor who played him, but
Either.
I thought he did great. He
Me
seemed
too.
not only genuinely surprised by Percy's revelation that Kronos has been haunting his dreams, but he was genuinely frightened by the whole thing too.
Well, he
Which,
totally flips his situation.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
he
it
completely
it
changes it.
completely changed everything for
Right,
like Hades was like, I wanted you to come down here so you could return my helm. Like, I don't have your helm. Like, what like he thought this was about the master bolt. I don't want the bolt. I want
right,
what's taken from me.
right.
And
And the whole story. I think one of the things I like about what the writer does with this is that most of us, maybe it's from watching Hercules, maybe it's from I don't know, but you think of Hades and you're just like, that's the bad guy. That's the one who's trying to, that's totally it. But yeah, you totally get flipped here when you realize that Hades, no, Hades has not been the one doing this.
yeah. Yeah, and it's
So
it's easy to think that way too, to think of Hades as the bad guy. I mean, he's the god of the underworld. So
right,
if war breaks out in not only among the gods, but if war broke out among the gods, it would obviously break out among Western civilization as we know it. That means a lot of loss of life. And what does that do for his kingdom in the underworld? It expands it, right? I mean, you've got all these dead
yeah,
people coming in. I've
right,
got more subjects. That makes me more powerful.
right.
So of course, it's easy to think of him as the one who wants to take them down, but that is obviously not his intention with any of this.
No, no.
Um, let's see. So episode eight is the finale, and the title of this one is "The Prophecy Comes True," which sounds super ominous. But this one wraps up the season with some pretty intense moments. What are your overall impressions of the finale?
Well, I can't say anything without first mentioning Lance Reddick, and
Oh my gosh.
he's great in everything he does, and it's so sad that he passed. But you one of the things that I really like about his character is he has a piercing gaze, just right through your soul. So his anger and the way that Percy was with him, is just so defiant. And I appreciate it because obviously his dad calls it out on him, just like this defiant personality. But it goes against all powerful reason. Like Percy could get decimated with a snap, a Thanos snap. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
yet he just will keep on with him no matter what. I I,
Yeah.
I love the scene. I like the scene with the dad. Um, a lot. I like that actor as well. My actor from, oh gosh, lots of shows. He was Lost in Space.
Was
Remember
this
him from Lost?
Poseidon?
Yeah, yeah, Poseidon. He was in Lost in Space. He played the dad.
Yeah, it's so it really is. It's sad that we're not going to be able to see Lance Reddick continuing the role of Zeus. I'm going to come back to that. So we've already found out that it's been picked up for a second season. So uh, that's likely another 8 episodes that will adapt the Sea of Monsters. That's the second book. Now you haven't read the
No,
the second book, right?
I only read the first one. I have them, so now I feel compelled. Like I've got to read. I've got to
Yeah,
read the second book now.
at
Can
least
I ask
read
you a
that one
question?
before the next one comes out. Yeah.
I got to ask you a question though. The fight between Ares and Percy, like
Uh-huh.
in the book and even in the show, like I tolerate, but I'm just like, come on,
Right.
come on, you know,
Yeah.
it's Ares, god of war. You're gonna tell me that, snot-nosed brat was able to get a cut in. You're gonna tell me that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's just there. I think it's I like the writing a lot, but if there's anything that was lazy plot point writing, it was this. This part, I'm just like, there's no, come on. There had to have been some other way that you could do
Yeah.
this.
It's kind of the same uh argument you get with The Force Awakens where Rey is fighting Kylo Ren with she's never picked up a lightsaber before in her life and she beats him in a duel.
Right, right.
Uh it's like
And they tried to
seriously.
fix it. They tried to fix it by doing a flashback to him like sparring with Luke. And it's just like, and you could feel like somebody's in the writing room going, y'all. And they're, well, let's just throw in a little training session where it shows that he has some natural talent. I'm like, even so, you got like the God of War. It's just okay. That's all I'll say on it. It's
Yeah,
just like
but that's the thing. Even though there's a flashback of him training with Luke, he was at camp for what, 3 days before he got sent on this quest. I
it
mean, how much
doesn't
training
merit
did
a
he actually get?
flashback.
The
It,
man, the kid didn't have a sword until he was at that museum a week before, and it's like, no,
I would have
yeah. So
rather
it's a
watched
little
him playing. I would have rather a flashback to him being younger and playing a video game of fighting than I would have
right.
cared about that.
Yeah, I'm playing the video game version of
Yeah.
Dungeons and
Playing
Dragons or
Soul
something.
Calibur. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah. Yeah,
oh,
it's a little hard to swallow. This 12-year-old kid beating the God of War in a one-on-one sword fight. But hey, what's meant to be is meant to be.
okay.
Uh
All right.
so yeah, so that happens. Obviously, he gets his hands on Hades's helm and returns it to the Fury lady, Mrs. Dodds, as we know her in her human form. Again, played by Megan Mullally. Great job. Way,
Right.
way off character for her. She was so serious.
Very.
Um, like beyond serious. But she's able to return the helm to Hades. And one thing that differentiates from the show that didn't happen in the book when they use the pearls to like teleport out of Hades, they go straight to Long Island. And so they're already on the other side of the country, which sort of makes sense. But in the book, there's this uh sense of foreboding because the only way to get back to the East Coast quickly is to take a plane, which they do, and or at least I can't remember if all three of them are on the plane or if it's just Percy. I think it's
Mm.
just Percy, and it's like this is a bad idea because Zeus is the Lord of the Sky, and so this plane is experiencing turbulence the entire way back to New York, and it's like he's tempting fate here, but in the show he just goes straight to Montauk Beach and and
Which is, I
that's just
think it's
all it is.
better. I mean, that's better, right? I mean, it's just a little unnecessary. The performance of what happens in Olympus is enough to be able to understand, that, and maybe it's just because of the performance of Lance Reddick, but yeah, I think you get it. You get the picture. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and Olympus was gorgeous. They did a fantastic job
I thought so too.
depicting all that ancient Greek architecture, building up to what is the top of Olympus and the throne room. Yeah, we mentioned Lance Reddick as Zeus. Unfortunately, we won't be able to see him portraying Zeus anymore. I mean, he did a fantastic job commanding that scene that we got with him. It was just the one scene. It's hard to believe that that's all we got, but
Let me
he
just tell
was
you, what you
so
need is
powerful.
you're going to have Morgan Freeman. I mean, to me, I mean, that's there's only one place you can go now. It's Morgan Freeman.
Well, that was going to be my next question. What do you not only what do you think of his portrayal, which you've already talked about, but who would you cast for Zeus in future seasons?
I mean, who else do we have? I mean, that can command that kind of presence. Of course, Morgan Freeman. The problem with Morgan Freeman is that even when he was a bad guy in Black Rain, he's still like a good, like he's the one you like. You know what I mean? He looks mean, and you're just like, man, you're just a great guy. You know?
And he does
Oh,
have experience playing God, so
that's true, Bruce Almighty. Um,
uh,
so I guess the one thing I'd call out for that scene too is the when Percy and his dad talk and they have that moment and Percy asks him, "Do you dream about her? Did gods dream?" Because he heard Ares say they don't dream.
right,
He
yeah,
says, "Do you?" And the one question is, it's not, why did you leave us? Why, or why weren't you there? Or why haven't you spoken to me? It's it's him knowing how much his mom deeply loved his dad and wondering if he's no longer wondering why Poseidon was not in his life. I think he gets it. I think he
yeah,
gets the circumstance, the situation, but do you still love my mom? Is really what he's asking, you know?
yeah,
And I thought that was a very special scene.
yeah. All right. Well, it seems like the reception to the series has been overwhelmingly positive. Both critics and audiences are praising its faithfulness to the source material, and its engaging storytelling. I think they did a great job adapting this first book. What do you think sets Percy Jackson and the Olympians apart from other fantasy series that may not have performed as well on other streaming services?
I would say the same thing that drew a lot of us to connect with Harry Potter from the beginning, and that's the friendships. I think that when you see those three characters hug at the end, it is very reminiscent of the ending of Sorcerer's Stone
Yeah,
when the three characters hug. Um, Gods, Olympus, story, fighting, all that stuff, quirky, a different take. I don't know that the overarching, value of the show would be in the subject matter as much as it was the character development and the relationship building. I
yeah.
think that stands out across multiple people of different age and persuasions. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, really, in any kind of story that's being told, whether it's a movie, a TV series, or a book, if you don't have good character development, if you're not making me care about these characters, story doesn't matter.
Right.
So yeah,
Agreed.
it's I love the story here. I love the story that is to come in the rest of the series of books. Um, but again, yeah, the story wouldn't matter if I didn't care about Percy and Annabeth and Grover and the other characters we come along to meet in future installments.
Well, let me ask you a question on that regard, because like we said, I've read the first book, and now I've watched this show, and I still have plenty of books to read that continue to have an allure. Would you say I mean, do I have a lot to look forward to when it comes to further character development, relationships?
Oh yeah.
Is there more for me? I guess I'd say.
Yeah, there's a new character that's going to be introduced in the second book that becomes very important to the series. There are three, well, in the third book, or what would I guess be the third season of this series, there will be two new characters that are introduced and a third character who is really reintroduced, who, all three of them become very important. It's really it's exciting and it's heartbreaking. Yeah, I really, looking back, I can say that when I look at the Harry Potter series, those books, the audience ages with those books, right? So, and those books age with the audience. You start out, you've got those first three books that are definitely aimed at kids, right? But
Right.
then you move on and they get darker and more serious. And it's like, no, these aren't kids' books anymore. These are
Right.
just really good novels.
Right.
And as good as the Percy Jackson books are, this series of five books, these are kids' books. They
Right.
really, I mean, I'm not going to mince words about that. And that's not to say I don't enjoy them. I'm a big fan of young adult novels. Um, but these books are aimed at the ages of the kids who are in these books.
Right.
Um, so it makes sense, the way that the story is told. And again, that's not to harp on Rick Riordan or his style of writing, because I think when you move on to the second series that is a sequel to Percy Jackson and the Olympians, you've got new characters that come along, and it takes place in the same world, but the characters are all older, and so the storytelling is more mature. The books are longer, and so there's a more mature pace to those books. Um, but yeah, I would say you definitely have a lot to look forward to, especially as it ramps up and you get to the end of the series of books, because the payoff is fantastic. There are things that I want to talk about that are set up in this book that I can't say because they don't pay off until the fifth book.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like there's just too much that happens,
No, that's
especially like
exciting.
in the very end of it, that it's like we've mentioned certain things talking about these episodes, and it crossed my mind like, oh, I can't say anything about that because that's not revealed until the very end. Um, like the end of book five. So it's like, well, we'll get there eventually. Um,
Yeah, we
but
will.
yeah, where do you see things going? Like, if using your imagination, what do you think's coming? We know that the next one is the Sea of Monsters. But knowing what we know at the end of this season, what kind of things can you expect that have been set up for the future?
Well, I feel like Kronos is gonna, you know, come out and escape and, come back to his true Voldemort form, or
Mm.
whatever. I mean, it's similar, right?
Yeah.
Um, I I do wonder because like when you bring out all of the gods, like you have, and you almost condescend, like you brought them down to this level where they've faced off and bantered words or even blades with Percy. It's hard for me to envision, well, where do you go from here? You know what I mean? And of course, the Olympians or going into like the Jupiter and all that stuff, I could see that whole being a whole nother thing. But I do wonder. I'm like, well, now what? We're gonna train. Is there gonna be a monster? I gotta see a monsters. You know what I mean? Is the world gonna come to an end? And is there some arching Kronos person behind it? I mean, so I'm not trying to like be cynical. It's just
Yeah.
I am sitting here wondering, like, well, now what? You know?
I think as long as Percy gets another couple of days of sword training, I think we'll be fine.
That's really all it takes. I mean, honestly.
Yeah. I'm thinking about taking up sword play myself. Maybe archery. I'm sure I'll be an expert in a week.
Well, you and I playing pretending to be Link and and Nintendo Power back when we were kids. I think that was all the training we need, really.
Didn't one of us have a Sword of Omens from Thundercats at one point?
Yes, I did.
Yeah,
Oh, I
thought so.
missed that. You know what would go great up on this wall would be
Sword of
that
Omens.
right there. That would be it.
Yeah. All right. Anything else before we wrap up?
No,
Final
no, it's great.
thoughts.
Now we just
Great
have to wait
show.
for the next one. Yeah.
Uh, folks, if you haven't had a chance to see it, if we just spoiled the whole thing for you, it's still worth watching. Seriously, the actors, the kids are great. The cameos of the famous folks playing the gods, that's good too. And seriously, Lance Reddick, man, like you can't say enough about that guy. And it's so sad that he's no longer with us. But exciting times ahead for sure. We got season 2 coming probably next year. I'm sure they're going to want to jump on it before the kids age out of their roles. So this wraps up our discussion on the first season of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that little bell icon to be notified whenever we post something new. And until next time, have a great whatever it is, wherever you are.
See ya.